I'm Tom Schieffer. I'm pastor from Northern Indiana, and it's just a great time to be with you. We're students. Each and every one of us are students, and we're digging in. And even today, no matter how many times I've been in Matthew chapter 20, there is still something more there to learn. So let's get right into it, because it picks up right after Matthew 19. And everything that we saw in Matthew 19 is being driven by Peter's response to the rich young ruler. Because he said, hey, what's in there for us? What's going to be there for us? And so Jesus starts in this parable of the workers in the vineyard. Here we go, Matthew chapter 20, verse 1. For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. Here it gets started. And after agreeing with the workers on 1 denarius for the day, he sent them into his vineyard. Now, we're going to do something here. I want you to see this as we come through, and then we're going to see these different groups that are going to just kind of flow out of there. So here in verse 2, we've got the first group. We'll call them group 1 for lack of anything better. Take a look. What's their agreed on wages? Guys? Oh, Kevin?
1 denarius.
1 denarius. But I want you to notice this. Notice they make an agreement. These guys are getting out there at the beginning of the day, and he sends them out for the day. A day in the workforce is 12 hours. This is all based on the culture and the work day, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And that's why, so in some translations, you've got a specific hour given. Sometimes it's the number of the hour in the sequence. They're going to work for 12 hours. Then it goes on. Here we go, verse 3. And he went out about 9 in the morning, and he saw others standing in the marketplace doing nothing. It's time for the harvest. So here's verse 3. Here's group 2. A bunch of workers out there. How much are they going to get? He says, I want you to go up my vineyard. I'm going to give you whatever is right. Look at that.
I can't believe they agreed to that.
They wanted work.
They weren't doing anything.
They're not doing anything. Yeah. They're handing around. What do we got to do? And notice, the first group made an agreement. This group, he just says, whatever's right, and off they go. They're going to go for 9 hours. Let's see what happens next. Again, this is a parable. Don't read too much into the details, but notice that he's trying to make a point. So he goes out, and here comes here we are in verse 5. And here we got group 3 at noon. So they're going to work for 6 hours, from noon to 6. And he went out again for another group here, also in verse 5. This is group 4. And the agreement of what they're going to get, again, is whatever's right. They don't do anything, and he sends them out, and they get 3 hours. Okay, so it's harvest. There's an energy that's going along here in the story of this parable. And he says, here we go. And then eventually get to verse 6, about 5. He went and found others standing around, and he said to them, what have you been doing, standing around all day doing nothing? Well, and they reply in verse 7, because no one hired us. So he said, you also go into my vineyard. So here we have in 6 and 7, the 5th group, and he just sends them out 1 hour. Here's the agreement. And in the story and the retelling of this parable, Jesus uses the example of the denarius. This is a picture of a denarius. It's a coin. And some of your translations will come out and say, it's a penny. Now, a penny sounds pretty stupid to us. It's like, I'm going to work for a penny, because that was the agreement for 12 hours a day. I'm going to work for a penny. Or a denarius, the transliteration of the actual coin, a Greek coin. That sounds kind of awkward to us as well, because we don't know what that means. It literally means a day's wage. Whether and whatever the coinage is, this was a day's wage. And they're going to get a day's wage. So we get to verse 8. It comes to the end of the day. This is kind of fun. Evening came. The owner of the vineyard told his foreman, call the workers and give them their pay, starting with the last and ending with the first. Everybody who is listening to this parable is going to know that this is part of the law. Deuteronomy 24, verses 14 to 15, says that you pay the worker at the end of the day. Make sure that they get their whole day's pay. Here is daily bread. We were talking about the Lord's Prayer. Give us today our daily bread. Give us what we need for today. Okay, it's pay time. And he says, I'm going to pay the last group first. So those that were hired, about 5, that last group, they came and he gave them 1 denarius. Oh, that don't look too shabby. I get a whole day's wage for 1 hour of work. But the first ones came, the ones that made the agreement at the beginning of the day. They assumed they'd get more. But they also received a denarius. Okay, guys, how's that going to make you feel? You've watched the guys that worked 1 hour get a whole day's wage. You got to see the guys that worked 3 hours, 6 hours, 9 hours. And this is harvest work. They're out in the sun, they're working hard, a lot of sweat. It's pressure to get everything in. What are you going to feel like if you were the first ones hired?
I'm thinking that if I'm going to get hired again the next day, I'm not going to show up till 5 o'clock.
Oh, now there's a creative. That ain't bad.
He was a pretty good shyster making an agreement.
Isn't that interesting? And I hadn't seen this before. Warren Wiersbe pointed this one out to me as I was reading from him. Notice the only ones that made an agreement were the guys at first. Everybody else, he just said, I'm going to give you whatever's right. And they get all upset. And they start to verbalize it. As we go on to verse 12, they complain to the landowner and they say, these last men who put in 1 hour, notice this one, you made them equal to us, who bore the burden of the day and the burning heat. You made them equal to us. Doesn't that sound familiar? And it almost harkens back to what Peter said. Well, what about us? We've been with you this whole time. The one that we identify as the rich young ruler, well, look at what happened to him, but what's going to happen to us? We've been with you from the beginning of the day. In a parable, don't get too involved in all of the details other than seeing that we're going to receive everything that we're due. There's something in us about human beings. We like to just go, oh, that's not fair. You're not being fair to me. I don't know where that came from, but how many times do we look at God and we just say, it's not fair. It's not fair. There's this sense of comparison, this sense of entitlement. And so here Jesus carries on in the parable, and this is fun. Verse 13, he replied to one of them, friend, I'm doing you no wrong. Didn't you agree with me on a denarius? Before you go on, don't miss that little line, friend. This was one of the discoveries I made this week. It's an expression. Myron Augsburger pointed this out for me. He uses it 3 times, Jesus does, in Matthew. And in each case, the person is in the wrong. It's earlier it's later here in chapter 22 in a parable where he says, friend, he's like, I'm going to help you correct something here. And it's also the terminology he uses with Judas. Friend, I'm going to help you understand something here. And he goes on in verses 14 and 15. Take what's yours and goes. I want to give this man the same as I gave you. And he carried, don't I have the right to do what I want with my business? Are you jealous because I'm generous? Literally, that last line, New American Standard translates it in a more literal sense, but it's an idiom. Is your eye envious because I'm generous? Is your eye envious? Are you jealous? The accusation is that the master is stingy. He's stingy. And he went, no, get your heart right. Get the view into your heart right. Get rid of that root problem of your perspective being wrong. Don't be envious because I'm generous. Because the key principle here, the key principle is that all who respond to God's invitation are going to receive all there is to receive. And it's not in this life. He's looking beyond all of that. Wiersbe said, we should not serve him because we want to receive an expected reward. And we should not insist on knowing what we will get. Keep that in mind, because as Jesus wraps up this parable, here again is that bookends. Notice from chapter 19 and here at verse 16, so the last will be first and the first will be last. I laugh every time I hear this. Back a number of years ago, Promise Keepers had their first clergy conference. And a bunch of us flew on ValueJet. That's even before Southwest and lining up. But when you got there, you got a number, and then you boarded the plane based on the number of when you showed up. And we were all coming back, all these pastors coming back to Columbus, Ohio. You could tell because we were all carrying some of the same stuff. And the ticket agent at the gate at ValueJet, getting ready to board the plane, looked at us all, and he goes, well, we're going to do this biblically. So the last will be first and the first will be last. It was a great illustration because it's time to understand what serving in the kingdom is all about. It's about understanding that we turn this all around. This parable has nothing to do with salvation because you can't work to earn your salvation. It has everything to do with the danger of pride. It has everything to do with the desire for reward. It has everything to do with understanding God's grace and emphasizing a right attitude in service. This is important to understand because of what's going to come next. I think this is all pointing back to how Jesus responded to Peter at the end of chapter 19. But a little bit later, as we get into verse 17, while going up to Jerusalem, Jesus took the 12 disciples aside privately, and he said to them on the way, listen, we are going up to Jerusalem. The Son of Man is going to be handed over to the chief priests and scribes, and they will condemn him to death. And they will hand him over to the Gentiles to be mocked, flogged, and crucified, and he will be resurrected on the third day. Jesus is actually living out the Shema. Do you know, he's told this parable, and then as they're walking along, and you're going up to Jerusalem. You always go up to Jerusalem. Even if you're coming off the Mount of Olives, you have to go down, and then you come back up. But as they're going along, as they're walking along, he pulls the 12 aside. And he's been telling them about this parable because he's been responding to Peter. And here he has this opportunity. And he points out to them, because this is also in Mark's gospel in chapter 10. It's in Luke's gospel in chapter 18. This is the third time that Jesus announces his arrest, crucifixion, and resurrection. This is coming. And there's something we miss in the English, and in verse 19. The Greek highlights that mocked, flogged, and crucified are direct certainties. He doesn't just say this could happen. The intensive Greek tense is that this is an anticipated fact. It is going to happen. And that is intentional in even how he says this. And this time, he's actually also, and the first time that he clearly mentions the resurrection. That's going to slip their memory. But it's about the right attitude for service. Even as we look at everything that happened with this parable, he wants them to understand what service is all about. Okay, you guys are disciples. What's going to be the impact for you as you hear him say this?
I'm kind of going, I'm not sure I want to be hanging out here anymore.
That day's wage is going to be different, isn't it? Do you think they really caught on and understood? They didn't have a clue. Not really. So he's been talking about, in this parable of the workers in the vineyard, he says, God's going to give you everything that is required of you. He then, as he's going up to Jerusalem, pulls them aside and he says, take a look, listen to me. This is what my wage is going to be. And then mom comes in. This is fun. It's as it's told in Mark chapter 10, it's the two brothers that come up and ask it. But here in Matthew, the mother of Zebedee's sons approached him with her sons. Come on, boys. And she like grabs them and in her, I don't know where that voice came from, but it was kind of fun because, I'm going to make sure that my boys get what they're supposed to get. And she kneels down to ask him something. I mean, you can almost imagine how this is going. And he's just been talking about his passion, everything that's going to be coming of how he's going to offer himself. And she comes up and grabs a hold of the boys, kneels down to ask him something. Okay, she got my attention. What do you want? He asked her in verse 21. Promise me. I want to linger there a second, because she uses a Greek tense that says, this is command. You make this happen. Jesus, you promise me that these two sons of mine may sit, one on your right and the other on your left, in your kingdom. Now, the first thing I want you to, you're going, oh, how presumptuous. How absolutely presumptuous a mom. Wiersbe kept referring to the mom of James and John, the mother of Zebedee's son, as Salome. And I'm like, what? It doesn't say that. You actually have to do some charting out of Matthew 27, Mark 15, and John 19 with all the women that are engaged with the disciples and who are at the cross to actually put this together, that Salome may be the mother of the sons of thunder, the sons of Zebedee. And then also, if that's the case, James and John become Jesus's nephews. That's a bigger study for another day, but if this is Salome, there's something powerful that's coming up on there. But she's behind the request from all indications. And I want you to see something. Now, go back to 21 here for a second. These two sons of mine may sit, one on your right and the other on your left, in your kingdom. Notice, at the end of chapter 19, Jesus has already told them there are going to be thrones for you. The first thing that's important to understand, she actually dares to believe Jesus. But she misses something. She misses what that throne entails and how you actually get to that throne and where it is. Because Jesus has been speaking about the cross. They want the earthly crown. And Jesus is going to correct that. So Jesus answers, verse 22, you don't know what you're asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I am about to drink? We are able, they said to him. Yeah, they're able to the extent that they understand that now. But it's going to become more clear very, very soon. The old hymn goes from the minor to the major when we get to, oh, yes, are we able? And then it gets to the chorus, yes, we are able. Brothers and sisters, let's take this serious. They say, yeah, we're able. And Jesus then talks to them. You will indeed drink my cup, but to sit at my right and my left is not mine to give. Instead, it belongs to those for whom it has been prepared by my Father. And then he doesn't rebuke them for the presumption, but he highlights that there's going to be something more. He warns that there is something more. Because when the 10 disciples hear this, they became indignant with the two brothers. You have to wonder, were they really indignant with the two brothers, or were they envious that they didn't think of this themselves? Nuts! We missed our opportunity! And they start all going, it's family fight time here. And Jesus calls them over in verse 25. He says, come on, boys. Come on, my brothers. You that I've breathed into. You know that the rulers of the Gentiles dominate them, and the men of high position exercise power over them. It must not be like that among you. On the contrary, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first among you must be your slave. The last will become first, and the first will become last. And he's modeling for them what that means. You're going to serve And that service is going to take everything. And it's not about thrones in this life. It's not about crowns in this life. It's not about positions of authority in this life. It's about being a servant. The key to the kingdom is not found in greatness. It's not found in power. It's not found in position. It's in servanthood. He took on the very nature of a servant. He just told them what that was going to be. I'm going to be delivered over. I'm going to be mocked. I'm going to be beaten. I'm going to be crucified. And then I'm going to be resurrected. Notice something else, because I think I jumped over it. Because there is a sense here where Jesus has indicated for James and John, you are going to drink from this cup. You just don't understand it yet. James is going to be the first one to be martyred. John's going to suffer all sorts of things before he's ending up on the Isle of Patmos. And the mother of Zebedee's sons, if indeed she is Siloam, if she is indeed Siloam, she's not going to see two crowns, two thrones. She's going to be at the foot of the cross and see Jesus crucified with the thief on each side of him, on his left and in his right. And she's going to hear Jesus give his mother, his earthly mother, to her son and say, "This is now your son. This is now your mother." The cost of service is huge. We've made it too easy. I don't know why I'm getting emotional right now, because I hadn't been in any of this preparation. But we better not miss this, because he gave his life for each and every one of us. And he said the first shall be last and the last will be first. And it's about servanthood. It's not about authority. It's not about position. We worry too much about position. And when we don't get our due recognition, we start complaining, well, what's in it for me? That's what Peter asked. That precipitated how Jesus used all of this to teach them and to show how he's going to live this out and how they're going to live this out and how we're going to live this out if we're going to do it in kingdom ways. Just to put a kind of a seal on it. Just to put on a seal on it. The chapter ends up, they're leaving Jericho. And a large crowd followed him, verse 29. And there were two blind men sitting by the road. When they heard that Jesus was passing by, they cried out, "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David." Lord, have mercy, and the Greek tense here. Make this happen. This is the last compassionate healing that Jesus has before he fully enters Jerusalem. Mark names this as Bartimaeus, and there's another buddy with him. And everybody gets all upset. Verse 31, the crowd told them to keep quiet, but they cried out all the more, "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David." And Jesus stopped and called them. Said, "What do you want me to do for you?" "Lord," they said, "open our eyes." Open our eyes. They're very direct, and they desire to have their eyes opened. That's what he's been doing with the disciples. He's moved with compassion. He touched their eyes. Immediately they could see, and they followed him. They were specific, and he healed them, and they could see, and they followed as disciples. This is messianic. It's an indication. The king is showing that he is fulfilling Isaiah's predictions in Isaiah 29, 18 to 19, and Isaiah 35, 5 to 6. And then they responded. There's some hard things in this chapter. There's some just really, really hard things in this chapter. To understand that how we count our service isn't how Jesus counts it. And the demands that we place on God doesn't matter. And that it's going to cost. It's going to cost a lot. And while we want to get into that place of position, it's not about position. The place of position means an even greater sacrifice. And then we live this out. If we love the things of this world, we cannot love God completely. We can't love Christ completely. If we're not yielded completely to Him, no matter what we're going to receive. And He said, you're going to receive it all. If we don't yield up to Him completely, we can't obey Him unreservedly. To walk into that fire, no matter what it's going to be. We can't acknowledge Jesus as our King. That's our word for Matthew. King. He's King all the way through. He's our King unless we love Him supremely, offer everything to Him, obey Him, no matter when He calls. Whether it's at the 12th hour, the 9th hour, the 6th hour, the 3rd hour, or the last hour. And go after it with all we're worth. To obey Him, to go out into the fields and say, okay, Lord, I'm going to trust You in whatever. And then say, thank You, Lord, because You've changed everything. The King is instructing the 12 and all of His followers, that's us, in what it means to have the right attitude towards service. Jesus isn't done. This is on the eve. Because next chapter 21, He enters Jerusalem as a king, riding on a donkey. He's exalted as king, and they start shouting out all of the messianic prophecies from Psalms. And they say, look, He's on His throne. On the same day that they pick the Passover lamb for sacrifice. And He says, I will be handed over to be mocked, to be beaten, to be crucified. But I'm going to be resurrected. So let's get ready for tomorrow. God bless you.